Where Tua isn't the only one acquiring security this summer. The Dolphins have agreed to a 3-year extension with Mike McDaniel, sources telling our Jeff Darlington. McDaniel's entering his 3rd season with the Fins, has led them to the playoffs in each of his first 2 seasons. Impressive. Contributing to that is certainly this guy, Tyreek Hill. Here's Hill on his coach.
Absolutely love it, man. Absolutely love it. I'm glad that they did the right thing. I seen some on Twitter the other day that said every coach that the Dolphins pay, they either fire him like a year after, so hoping we can change that right there.
All right, talk to me. Do you like this move by Miami to extend McDaniel?
He was worthy of the contract extension, and I certainly don't want to give that impression, fellas, that he is not. 2 years in Miami, 20-14 record, 2 playoff appearances, although he's 0-2 in the postseason. But what I would respectfully ask to both of you champions, both of you guys that played in the National Football League, because I damn sure did. I would ask you rhetorically, while looking at you, do I have a right to be a little bit salty about the whole process? Like, for example, yeah, I understand you got to have a relationship with your quarterback. But don't y'all notice that some of these people be getting these jobs because of their relationship with the quarterback? You know what I'm saying? More so than the results. It really kind of rubs me the wrong way. It's like, I'm looking at Tua, for example. You get a 4-year extension. This extension of Mike McDaniel lines up with Tua's contract. So they're both reaching their expiration date at the same time. You understand what I'm saying? So it's this marriage made in heaven and all of this other stuff, right? And then we want to talk and brag about how Mike McDaniels has done such a bang-up job, such a great job, but that's not what Brian Flores did. Well,
Mike McDaniel, former OC in San Fran, agreed to a 3-year contract extension to stay in Miami through 2028. The extension puts McDaniel on the same timelines as quarterback Tua Tagovailoa, who recently signed a 4-year deal of his own worth $212 million. Dolphins have found their man in McDaniel after struggling to find consistency at head coach. Over the last 15 years, the Dolphins have made the playoffs 3 times, and 2 of those under McDaniel in the last 2 seasons. The offense has exploded in that time, ranking 6th in points, 3rd in yards. That said, Miami is 0-2 in the playoffs under McDaniel, still looking for their first playoff win since 2000.
I love that point about McDaniel and Tua, because When Tua signed his big contract and we were asked, do you feel good about this? Do you think it was smart? My answer was, well, I feel good about it as long as Mike McDaniel is his head coach. And the fact that they were able to lock McDaniel to a long-term deal, it does feel like those two contracts are sort of intertwined because of their mutual success.
So I made a couple of changes, couple of minor changes, but they're changes, and I'll give you the reason why. So let's start with the AFC. I still feel it's Bills, Dolphins, Jets, Patriots. I know more about the Dolphins than I do the Jets. I know they'll be wildly productive on offense. Offenses carry over. If you don't make big wholesale changes, a good offense one year is a good offense the next year. It's not the same for defense. Jets, Hassan Reddick's not in camp. Huff's gone. A lot of noise. I think it's Bills, Dolphins, Jets, Patriots.
Okay. In the Super Bowl, this is when it gets a little bit confusing, but bear with me. Because as you know, I treat my takes like a roulette wheel. Yeah, you can put a chip here and put a chip that seems to conflict on the other side. Doesn't matter. I'm going to win one of them probably. Super Bowl. Please reveal. 49ers over the Dolphins. And I know what
The Dolphins!
I believe in Tua, and I believe in Miami, and I believe they can. Well, you know what they call me? The straw.
Well, welcome for our feature segment for the week. Joined by a guest panelist, Cecil Sarney, while our co-host Steve Hallett joined us. I had some technical difficulties. Well, Jason, what can I tell you? After, it's a 6th year of the rebuild for Chris Grier after the Tampa 2 and, the trade, the whole purge of the roster, 39 Tunsil, all those picks, trading for, acquiring Jalen Waddle, Tyreek Hill, Bradley Chubb. The Dolphins are, right now in probably in a win or bust kind of mode. It's been almost over 20 years since our last playoff win. What's your opinion? Do you believe the Dolphins is for Chris Grier, Mike McDaniel, and Tua? Is it win or bust at the 2024 season?
I actually believe that is the case. This is kind of the redo of the first initial rebuild. They've had two mindsets. When Chris Grier initially started this thing, brought in Brian Flores, it's almost like they had a New England Patriot build and vibe. Didn't really work. Then you bring in Mike McDaniel, and now the build seems to be the San Francisco 49ers kind of mindset. And of all the work that Chris Grier has done in building this new variation of his vision, it actually has been pasted together to give Tua his best weapons. The defense could be rather good with Anthony Weaver coming in, calling the shots. And I think that they have changed their identity a bit. And I think it's going to be a bit of a more bullyish Dolphins defense. And I think that they could actually improve where they needed to improve last year, which is running the ball consistently when it's working, especially in short yardage, 3rd and 1, 4th and 1. I would like to get that offensive bully mindset, but I think the Dolphins are in a win or bust mode. I think they have the horses to do it this year. There's no excuses. If you're winning 11 games and making the playoffs, you have to win a playoff game. No excuses.
Absolutely. Mike McDaniel received a contract extension during the season. Probably if, there were some in the media already saying that Mike McDaniel would be on the hot seat, and now they're criticizing for the Dolphins settling and doing the contract extension too early. What are your opinion about the Mike McDaniel contract extension?
There's always going to be criticisms about the Miami Dolphins from a national media standpoint.
Absolutely.
It's rather unfortunate. It's annoying almost. But I think that everything makes fiscal sense when you really look at what they're doing. They're wrapping up a coach, a quarterback, his two favorite weapons. They've drafted the running back room essentially to have 4-year continuity, because even when Raheem Mostert, whatever it may be, probably next year or a year after that, is going to be done, you have Achane, you have Jalen Wright. So everything on this offense, even the left tackle in the drafting of Patrick Paul, the right tackle in Austin Jackson, there's a continuity build that for the next 3 or 4 years, this Dolphin team hopefully will get to the next level. But it makes such sense on why Waddle, Hill, McDaniel, Tua extended, all these new weapons added and brought in for the future. Because this past draft, as much as it kind of helped a little bit this year, was a draft for the next 3-4 years of this team to build a little bit of a continuity. So I really, truly believe that, yes, it is a make or break year, but the extension for McDaniel is warranted. It's perfect. It's no stresses, no headaches. Go on in with one goal, win, and win in the postseason.
Absolutely. My McDaniel revealed that it was actually owner Steven Ross who called him to his house to a dinner and basically talked to him into a contract extension. The Steven Ross, more than anyone knows, that the Dolphins had not had too much stability during the last 20 years. So since he got the team for Wayne Hasinga, so we got a coach like Mike McDaniel who has some camaraderie. Certainly, the Dolphins are in a better place right now than when Mike McDaniel joined the team.
Well, to be a fly on the wall during that meal, that would have been amazing. But yeah, continuity is huge, and again, it's absolutely warranted.
Absolutely. We're going to be joined by our co-host, Steve Hallen. Steve, welcome to Vince TV.
I appreciate you being patient with me. That was not a fun time.
You're patient with me all the time, Steve. So you're due.
It figures, right when we get a chance to start triggering it live. I know the system was waiting for Sarney to join us and everything, but the second that happened, the internet just totally went out. But
it's Murphy's Law. Everything that can go wrong will go wrong, but it always happens.
100%.
Steve, we were talking about you see the Dolphins saying with a feature presentation for the week. The Dolphins extended Mike McDaniel after all the purge, the time for two, the trading for Tyreek Hill, the trading of Laramie Tunsil, all those things that happened. The Dolphins face themselves now in year 6 of Chris Grier's rebuild. Do you believe that this season is a win or bust for the Dolphins, the 2024 season?
I mean, it's nothing new, but we all know what the NFL stands for, and Jerry Glanville, the icon that he is, coined it. Not for long. The reality is, it's not totally uncommon for teams to go from first to worst, or even to see like the runner-up in the Super Bowl totally miss the playoffs the next year. Dynasties are oftentimes few and far between, say for, I'd say over the past 30 years, what have we seen? Patriots, Bills had a really strong run in the late 80s into the 90s. Cowboys were strong for a while. Chiefs, they're on the edge of the dynastic type comparison right now. I don't think that we're in a win now or bust type scenario, but it's a really tough balance because teams get stuck in like that the purgatory of 500, that Jeff Fisher syndrome, where they just can't bust out of it. And I don't want to say that it's entirely win now for everybody, but go ask Teron Armstead or Calais Campbell if it's win now or bust for them, because I tell you right now, it is for them because they're in the late stages of their careers. And frankly, I really hope that they do have that mentality and it bleeds throughout the team. I mean, personally, I'm in a win a playoff game now or bust type mindset. There's just too many pieces around this team to not put it together and see it gel. I mean, year 3 of the Tua McDaniel era, more pieces. The defense, frankly, I mean, on paper, save for Bradley Chubb not being around and possibly some thin areas in the cornerback area, I really think that the defense is better or has the potential to be better, especially when you add in the new defensive coordinator Weaver. So win or bust, I won't go that far. Win a playoff game or bust, yes.
Absolutely. So we're going to be joined by our special guest. Mando, welcome back to Vince TV.
I appreciate it, Sammy. Anytime, brother.
Thank you for holding out. We had some technical difficulties during the day, but I appreciate you being with us here. Mando, you're famous for quoting that phrase, time for Tua. You were the first ever to say the time for Tua phrase. Chris Grier entering his 6th year in the rebuilding plan. After drafting Tua, trading Laramie Tunsil, trading for Tyreek Hill, the Dolphins still have not made the playoffs in a playoff game in a long time. Do you think that if Chris Grier and the Dolphins don't win the playoffs this year, it's a failure for the rebuilding effort for the Dolphins?
So, okay, obviously that's a black and white question, and I'm not going to offer you a black and white answer because
I know
there's a lot of, things that could happen.
A lot of layers, yeah.
Between now and January. If we're looking at a Miami Dolphins team that generally isn't any more beat up / injured than any other team that still has its starting quarterback, that still has playmakers on defense, and whose brand new rich coach is still on the sideline, then I would say to you the absolute must-have goal is to get into the postseason and succeed in the postseason. Brother, I was I was a Cub reporter when last time the Miami Dolphins won a playoff game in 2000. No, I really wasn't a Cub reporter, but the point being, I was only like 10 years into covering the Dolphins. I've covered the Dolphins for 30 years. So that's bad, right? They have to win in the postseason, do damage in the postseason, and especially in a year where, I'm not, the dynasty in New England has fallen.
Yes.
The great team in Buffalo, its window is not closed, but they're not as good as they've been. The Dolphins must win the division and get a home field advantage so that they can accomplish their goals.
Absolutely. Chris Grier has been criticized by some in the Miami media for the patchwork he did in the offseason. Of course, the Dolphins were a lot of money over the cap. They got some free agents, but OBJ is not going into the PUP, and some of the free agents are still to be determined. So there's some to question that even though Mike McDaniel got an extension last week, probably Chris Grier is still under fire as a general manager.
Well, he's not as under fire as he was in 2019 when I
Absolutely.
called him a failed GM. Right
Yes.
now, he's living large.
Yes. I still remember. I know.
I mean, back in the day when I was on the beat, there were phone calls both late at night and early in the morning, and it was, please don't do this, and it was, why did you write that? And it was, who told you this stuff? I remember that call very vividly. So, is he under fire? Look, Stephen Ross has been very patient, I would say, with Chris Grier more than anybody. The Dolphins are back-to-back winning seasons. It would take for them to have a losing season for Stephen Ross to start looking at Chris Grier sideways. I don't think that's coming, but that's what it would take.
Absolutely. So we're going to be back a little bit later in the show to talk about the AFC. So we will be back with you, Mando. Thank you. Well, we're back, and we're joined by the Fins TV crew of Sherry Hallett and Matt Armstrong. Good evening, guys.
Hello.
Ladies first, I'm going to start with Sherry. Sherry, you being a long life Dolphins fan, I know you before I know Steve. It's been that long you've been a Dolphins fan. You're very passionate about the Dolphins. We've seen everything from 1-15 to 7-9, 7-9, 7-9 to the McDaniel era. The Dolphins had to make a lot of strides during the last couple of years. What about your opinion on this? Do you believe that after all the rebuild, the 6-year Chris Grier rebuild, will it be a bust if the Dolphins don't win the playoff game basically this season?
Yes. I think if we don't win a playoff game, it's a bust. However, I'm going to preface that by saying our biggest thing, in my opinion, is depth. So every team has the risk of losing their starting star. Every single team that takes the field every weekend, Absolutely. There is a risk that their prime player is going to be done for the year. And we've seen it all too many times over the years, and it's terrible. Who's going to step up in that place? So I love how Armando said if we are the healthy team that starts the season at quarterback, at wide receiver, at defense, all of the places where we're supposed to be managing everyone handily, if we are still at 100% and we don't win a playoff game, that is a bust. Now, if we are not 100%, I want to see where have we got depth, and that concerns me. I I look at our receiver crew and I see some injuries that are going to stop us from death in the very beginning, and that's concerning. I'm not confident in our number 2 right now at QB, and that's a horrible way to feel going into a season, but I'm not. So I really need to see Tua, just like he did last year, protecting himself. Don't take those hits. Be smart, make smart decisions, make sure that he's in this for the long haul, and hope we don't get a game in minus 30 degrees so we can actually say, okay, we have a chance in this game. We have a home game. We have no excuses. I still look at a game against Kansas City and say, we play that game in Miami, I think it's a totally different outcome. And I get that it was cold for everyone, but we're used to 90, 95 degrees, and that was absurd. So, yes, I think healthy Miami Dolphins win a playoff game or it's bust. I don't think we get rid of Grier at that point, but I do think it's a bust.
Absolutely. I have some concerns. I truly don't. I see a lot of optimism in a lot of areas of the Dolphins. I'm not optimistic on some of the areas. I don't believe that the Dolphins are they're definitely better at tight end. They're definitely better at running back. I'm not so sure that we're better at the defensive line. I'm not so sure we're improving enough at the defensive backfield. The defensive line, we're not as good as last year. But on that note, I'm going to go to Mr. Positive, Mr. Perfect, Matt Armstrong. Matt, take me off the ledge. Why should I be optimistic? Why should give me some hope? Why the Dolphins should? So I should be fine about the 2024 Dolphins. Matt?
It's really simple. It's really simple.
It's
There's
always
so
simple.
much.
Exactly.
There is so much looking at past history. I love Armando referring back to when he was a Cub reporter. That's probably back when I first started looking at the Miami Herald online. But it's such a thing to look at past performance and consider that that's the indicator of what the future is going to be like. So let me talk all of you knuckleheads off of the ledge. A little over a year ago, a little less than a year ago, this team was on fire. This team was on fire and barreling towards home field advantage in the playoffs. They were barreling to the number 1 seed in the AFC. And the wheels came off because of injuries, starting with the Thanksgiving game against the Jets, and it just snowballed from there. And Sherry, I adore you, but if the Chiefs had played the Dolphins in Miami last year, the outcome probably would have been the same. There were 3 guys who were on their couches that Wednesday before that game on defense. I don't agree with that, but it probably would have been a little bit more competitive. I'll give you that. My point is can we at least get to 8-0, 9-0, 10-1? Can we at least get to there before we start talking about whether this is a bust season? It's a bust if we don't make the playoffs. It's a bust if we have the entire roster that we have now on the field, middle of December, out of the playoffs. Or as used to be very, very in trend a few years back on Twitter, in the hunt. We're in the hunt. Let's talk about it in December. Let's talk about it in November. If we're worse this November than we were a year ago, yeah, it's a bust. But right now, nobody in their right mind is talking about Mike McDaniel being on the hot seat. Nobody in their right mind. I saw Stephen A. Smith talking about, I'm just going to talk, this is rhetorical. And then he blows up. This is the same knucklehead who a year ago watched the Dolphins dismantle Denver. And then he went on his little show and he said, this is all Tyreek. This has nothing to do with Tua. Tua can't throw it more than 15 yards. And in the background of that show, they're showing him launching at 65 yards in the air. All right. I am not going to be party to that ridiculous thing to get people fired up. Although I am fired up right now. Thank you, Sammy. This is a
Absolutely.
Super Bowl roster right here. This is a bust season if they are not in the playoffs. This is a bust season if they don't make the playoffs and they have the same roster they will put on the field this Sunday.
Plus OBJ.
But yeah, we'll talk about OBJ later. But since let's talk about defensive line, I wanna get your thoughts, Jason and Steve, on what Chris Grier had to say about defensive line.
It's always interesting because Mike and I were talking about this the other day that with the offensive line, how every year that's you guys are like, oh, we're not good enough, but then offensively we're a pretty good offense the last 2 years, and a number of you guys have talked about how the guys have improved. Those guys on the offensive line have worked their tails off. We feel confident in them. The coaching staff believes in them, and Butch and Mike and Frank have done a great job, and Lem in helping those guys develop and work. And so I think the important thing is they all work together. It's a really cohesive unit, and just watching them work together is great every day. They hang out together, so it's a very close-knit unit. That said, yeah, we'll have someone to the practice squad like we always do. And just for your information, we released Jack Driscoll recently because we claimed Grant Dubose, wide receiver, and so that was the roster move for him. Jack's a good kid, worked his tail off. It's just unfortunately a numbers crunch for us. But we're confident in the offensive line. So again, it's just one of those. It's Mike and I we always kind of chuckle. I know you guys have made a joke about me saying that you guys are more worried about it than we are, but internally, that's how we feel about our group here as a team.
I heard this week some of the local radio and the Miami media, some of the reporters, some of they were offended at the fact that Chris Grier said he was chuckle about how the reporters were worried about the defensive line. So I'm going to go to Jason. Jason, to be honest, I share those thoughts. I share those concerns about the defensive line. So the defensive line could be the thing that basically halts the Dolphins' train for the 2024 season. Tua said last week that he doesn't need too much time to throw the ball, but still protection is key. So what are your thoughts about the offensive line for the Dolphins in 2024?
Obviously, there are concerning aspects when you have to get into the nitty gritty of certain things, like 3 seconds of protection for Tua, whereas he's usually a guy who gets the ball out remarkably quick. They have a terrific running game, as evident by them leading the league last year in yards per rush. However, why did they not run enough on 3rd and 1 or 4th and 1? They ran only 15 times on those short yardage and 3rd and 4th situations because out of fear of being able to pick up that 1 yard up the middle, because I think of the strength of the offensive line. So this is a team that can mask the offensive line deficiencies extremely well. It's like it's like having a car that does not have brakes, but you don't need the car to stop because it's a high jumping car that lands in the water. It's like you don't need to utilize that aspect, but that's not how things work, though, in football. You really need to solidify this group. You can't have a musical chairs of 12 guys or combinations. And the problem is there's a hole in the exact middle. You have your left guard, you have your center and your right guard that there's definitely question marks on all those positions. Is Aaron Brewer healthy enough? Is Liam Eichenberg good enough? Is Robert Jones going to have a season that he could be relied upon? Is an undrafted free agent who's gone up and down a practice squad. Can he be a full-time starter? Can 5 guys show continuity on this line? But I'm worried. They can mask it. I get that. But in the nitty-gritty, on the road, when you need to silence the crowd and run the ball and pick up first downs and not care about crowd noise, the best way to not care about crowd noise and having a quarterback need to hear and audibilize or just say, screw it, we're just going to run down your throats. So until that happens, I'm still concerned.
Absolutely. In this kind of offense, Mike McDaniel was a wrong game coordinator, but this is kind of offense there. To know each other as offensive line is key, but to have really good players that know what they're doing, who are healthy, is key for the offensive line for the Dolphins. Steve, what are your thoughts about I don't want to be the bearer of bad news, the doomsday guy, but what are your thoughts on the 2024 Miami Dolphins offensive line?
Well, my social media thoughts on this actually earned me my most popular Yeah, I'll call it popular. Even if you're getting bad press, it's still good. It's when you're not getting any press at all, which is usually my social media profile, because nobody ever reacts to me except for this time. But what's
Oh,
Chris Grier
you
gonna say?
you got a lot of reaction this week.
I'm
I
married to the
did.
little guy.
I did. But what's Chris Grier going to say? Is he going to stand up there and say, "Oh yeah, I screwed the pooch and I just couldn't deliver in terms of improving the offensive line at all"? I mean, don't get me wrong. I love that there's cohesiveness. I love that they can sit around, break bread around the table, hold hands, say grace, and sing Kumbaya, have a great dinner, and hug it out at the end and leave. That's great. But to Jason's point, and we've said this before on this broadcast, you can hide deficiencies on the offensive line with quick release by having those precise routes run. Tua doesn't even need his wide receiver to be turned around or even 3 steps from turning around before he's cocking back to throw it, because he can do that. But what happens when you have a better defense that knocks those players off their marks and Tua doesn't have them to throw anymore? Now he's not getting rid of the ball as quickly. And now all of a sudden those warts start to show themselves.
Mm-hmm.
I'm really hopeful that we see Austin Jackson 2.0. Who's going to make that big step that goes from, oh my God, that was a horrible draft pick, to Austin Jackson showed up last year and absolutely balled out. I'm ready for that to be Eichenberg. I'm ready for that to be anybody. I'm ready for Teron Armstead to surprise me and go longer than 10 and a half games this season. But I have hopes. I just know that I tend to go back to my own internal reality, which is there are teams that are going to knock us off of our game, that are going to push us around. And how are we going to push back? How are we going to fight back? Jason's dead on. I said this before on the broadcast. Philadelphia Eagles did so well by totally demoralizing teams when it's 3rd and 2 and all they do is run a single or back-to-back quarterback sneaks and they rely upon that offensive line. We don't need that, but Alec Ingold said it the other day. Run behind me. Prove a point. Get those short yardage pickups and just shut the crowds down, demoralize the defense, and frankly, that's going to energize the offense because, they get a little bit more time to rest on the sidelines and prep for their next drive. So what's Chris Grier going to say? That's my bottom line. I mean, he's not going to say he screwed up.
Absolutely. Sherry, before we go to the next topic, I want to know your thoughts about the offensive line before I go to Matt for the final thoughts on the Miami Dolphins Endgame.
I'm so glad you asked, because I keep hearing everybody say the same thing, that we are masking the deficiencies. What a wonderful world it would be if we didn't have a deficiency to mask and Tua didn't have to throw the ball in 0.2 seconds and somebody didn't have to get open as fast as they can and they were able to run full routes on a consistent basis, because we aren't masking a problem area. I want that area to thrive. I want that to be, look at what, like Steve said, look at what we can do to you, because not because in spite of our line we can succeed, but because of our line we have such a better chance of taking it to you that you don't even know which direction we're going to come from.
Absolutely. Matt, you're the positive one. You probably see a silver lining on everything. I appreciate that about you, but I have my thought. I have my reservation by the Miami Dolphins offensive line. Having said that, Driscoll went back to the Eagles today, so if the Dolphins didn't think that was good enough for the Dolphins and the Eagles grabbing him so quickly, maybe I don't know what I'm talking about. What are your thoughts about the Miami Dolphins offensive line?
My thoughts are this: I didn't even know who Jack Driscoll was until and the craziest thing of all is Twitter blew up. I wasn't on Twitter all that day, and oh my God, I haven't even been on. I logged on, and it was just venom. I tried to go through the entire day's thread. Chris Grier's awful. He's the worst. How can you let him go? And one of the voices that's on the Twitterverse that I respect, even though there are times that I'm like, what is he talking about? And I'm not going to mention him here, but you guys know who I'm talking about. He was critical of letting Driscoll go, and we signed a receiver in his place. Okay, I'm not in that front office. I don't know. I don't know if Jack Driscoll fit what they wanted to do. I don't know if he could do what they needed him to do. I do know that I have a friend who won a brand new Dodge Dakota. She entered her name in a raffle, and she flipping won it, right? The good news is you want a brand new truck. The bad news is you got to pay the taxes on it. Oh my God. The worst case scenario, the Miami Dolphins are a Super Bowl contender, and we found some potential warts. Oh my God. Can we get to the
I can
games?
find them
please?
for you, Matt.
That's because you're looking for them.
I don't think it's hard to spot this one, though. This one's a pretty glaring wart.
And not one person on this broadcast saw what happened last year coming. Not one of us. Not me. Nobody saw 70. Nobody saw Shane showing up like.
Well, you predicted 70. To be perfectly honest, you predicted a blow in that game. So
Well,
you saw that coming.
Thank you for recognizing my.
You two
I
get a
did.
rose.
I am the one who said that.
I'm sure you said undefeated also, though. So
Yes, that too. We'll talk about that in a few. So we'll talk about the perfect season.
About that, but I get the nitpicking. I get that is human nature. That is not my nature. I can't wait for Sunday. And listen, I'll be the first one to stand up and say, "Holy crap, we're trash," or whatever the adjective may be. But I just think it's a lot of hand wringing for nothing. We haven't seen anything yet.
Thanks for watching Fins TV. Please like and subscribe.
Miami Dolphins number one. Miami Dolphins. Miami Dolphins. Miami Dolphins number one.
See you next week. Fins up.